This is a hoverball game. What do we do with a hoverball game? Well, we blow into the shaft, we try to get this ball to rise up off of the ring, hover in the air, and then we want the ball to land back down on the ring. Let's see how we do this. I almost didn't get it to land on that ring, but I did. And so that's how we play the hoverball game. You can play this by yourself, or you can play it with a group of people. Try to see how long you can hover it and how many times you can land it back down on the ring. How do we build a hoverball game like this? Well, it's made out of just a few pieces of bamboo. Let's take a look. The interesting thing is, we need a pretty big piece of bamboo in order to make this little tiny game. The ring here is made from the base of the bamboo, which would be the larger diameter. The ring holder is also made from the larger piece of bamboo, the bottom. This, the horizontal air shaft and the vertical air shaft, are made from the top part of the bamboo. So we need a large piece of bamboo to get a few parts to make this little game. So this is about a 10-foot piece of bamboo I have right here. This is the base of the bamboo, and this is what I would use to make the ring and the ring holder. I go on up to the upper parts of the bamboo, and that's where I'm going to get to the smaller diameter to make the horizontal shaft, and the vertical air shaft would be even further up here. So this is what I'm going to be using. I cut the branches off in the field, usually right there when I'm in the bamboo grove, and then I'll cut this shaft down and bring it into the shop and work with it in the shop. I have here the fresh bamboo with all the branches, side branches cut off. And now what I need to do is process it into parts so we can let this bamboo season. That is, we need to let it dry, and then we can build our game from the dried bamboo. This is what I'm going to use to make the ring and the ring holder. So here we have the game right here. This is the ring and the ring holder. I'm going to use this large diameter bamboo to make these. What I want to do really is just cut off the nodes. What is a node, you might say? This right here, these swollen areas on the bamboo cane are what we call nodes. It's where the branches come out. I don't need the nodes for this part of it, so I'm going to cut them off. All I want is the hollow cylinder. I use a Japanese saw, fine bladed Japanese saw to do this, and I put it on the bench hook and simply cut it off. Now, what if you don't have a fine bladed Japanese saw? There's going to be an issue when you cut this with most any other saw, believe it or not. So I have a Western saw here. Let's see what happens when I cut this bamboo with a Western saw. What happens is these edges get frayed. There are little splinters that are hanging off the edges. Let's take a closer look. Here you can see these splinters or the frayed edges that come off of the bamboo. They're very easy to deal with. Just simply grab them and pull them down and they'll come off. I consider these frayed edges just a minor nuisance, really. Not much to worry about. So now I have a handful of cylinders for making the rings. I can make an awful lot of rings out of these. Won't need that many of them. But now I want to make the horizontal air shaft, and I'm going to use this, the upper part of the bamboo, to make this. What I want to do is I want to leave one node at the bottom, but I want to cut the other node off from the top. So here's how I do that. Get these other nodes out of here. So I have one node hooked onto the bottom already. So the top part of that is grabbing onto something. I'm just going to cut just below the other node. Cut these off, so I'll work it right up the line, just like that. Cut one off at a time. Now I have a number of pieces that can be used for the horizontal air shaft. They have the node attached at one end, but an open end on the other. The last thing I need are some of the vertical air tubes, and I'm going to use the very smallest part of the bamboo for that. All I need to do is cut these into smaller pieces, again let them season, and then we're ready to move on to the next step. How do you know when the bamboo is fully seasoned? In other words, how do you know that it's lost all of the water weight that it will lose? Because you need bone dry bamboo when you make this game. The easiest way to do that is bundle it all together, put it on a kitchen scale, weigh it. I weighed it, it's 394 grams. I put today's date on there, and I'll come back and weigh this a week from now and a week after that. Once I get 2 weeks with the same weight, I know the bamboo has lost all the water that it's going to lose, and it's ready to be worked with at that point. 2 weeks ago, I processed some fresh bamboo and I bundled it up to let it season. I weighed the bamboo then, and it weighed about 400 grams. Today, it weighs under 300 grams, just under. It's lost 111 grams, so over 25% of its weight in water. This bamboo is not quite seasoned yet because it's not finished losing weight. The point I want to make is that bamboo contains a lot of water weight. You really need to let it season for some time. This bamboo, this bundle right here, I imagine this could lose up to 50% of its weight in water when it's finally done. Thankfully, today I have some bamboo that I previously seasoned. So let's get started on our hoverball game. So this is the finished game right here. This is what we're trying to make today. And it's only made from 4 pieces of bamboo. We have the shaft, we have the vertical air tube, we have the ring, and the ring holder right there. So I like to make the ring and the ring holder first, glue them together. Then I make the shaft and the vertical air tube and glue them together. And then finally, I glue both of those parts together, or both of those assemblies together, to make the final product. So let's go ahead and get started. I make the ring and the ring holder from the base of the bamboo, that is the larger diameter part of the bamboo plant. I begin by sanding the outside of the plant. I want to get good adhesion with the glue when I put these two parts together. So sand the outside of it just quickly, quick sand, and then I start cutting the rings. I cut the rings about 4 millimeters wide. Now that I've cut the rings, I'm going to cut the ring holder from the same cylinder of bamboo. Now I made a game previously, so I have that as a model. I'm going to go ahead and measure how long I made the ring holder at that time. Let's see, I made that about 55 millimeters, or let's measure it in inches, 2 1/8 inches. So I'm going to cut this cylinder to 2 1/8 inches, or 55 millimeters. Okay. So there we have the ring holder blank, ready to go. Now what I need to do is split this into several pieces. Now, I could use a chisel with a mallet. That's a little unwieldy. I have done that before. But what I'd rather do here is use a knife and a mallet. Just going to split it in half. Go easy. Press down on it. Got a split. So you might be wondering, how wide do I make these splits? Well, I grab a horizontal shaft, which is going to be the next stage, but I'm going to use that as a tool to measure about how wide I'm going to make these splits. So I make the splits about as wide as the horizontal shaft. Now that I have some rings and some ring holders, it's time to prepare them for glue. The interesting thing is that the ring and the ring holder may or may not fit very well together. In other words, the ring holder may have a tighter curve on it than the outside of your ring. Let's take a look here. So I think, as you can see right there, there's a gap between the ring and the ring holder. What I need to do is sand that gap down a little bit, or that is cut the edges down a little bit so that they both fit together snugly so I can glue them. The way I like to glue the ring to the ring holder is by putting a little dab of glue on a piece of cardboard and then touch the ring to that dab of glue and then place it on the ring holder. That seems to work pretty well. And you don't get too much glue squeeze out when you do it like that. Now I'm going to create the horizontal shaft with the vertical air tube. As you can see, the horizontal shaft has a flat spot on there, and that's where I'm going to glue the ring and the ring holder. But in order to create that, I need to cut off these branches that we had here on this horizontal tube. So I'm going to cut these branch stubs off by holding this vertically like that and putting the Japanese saw right there and just cut them straight down. After I've cut the branches off of the horizontal shaft, I'm going to further flatten the area where I sawed off the branches by sanding it on a piece of 120 grit sandpaper. Put it on the bench right there, just press down, sand it until it's relatively flat, and that's it. Next on the list here is to create the vertical air tube. Now I already know how long to make the vertical air tube. We measured out the ring and the ring holder. The height of the ring holder was 55 millimeters. So I'm going to go a centimeter less than that, so 45 millimeters is going to be the length of the vertical air tube. I want it to sit under the ring. Now with the vertical air tubes are interesting because you want to use something that is the right size. A large diameter vertical air tube means a lot of air is going through this thing, which could lift a pretty big ball. However, you will quickly run out of air if you're trying to use a large diameter vertical air tube. So this size right here, this is the size I prefer. It's about 3 millimeters. 4 millimeters would be the maximum. Once you get to 5 millimeters, that's too big, too much air going through. So aim for about 3 to 4 millimeters for the size of the vertical air tube. Now that I've cut all the vertical air tubes to length, it's time to drill a hole in the horizontal shaft to accept the tube. Since these vertical air tubes are all of a slightly different diameter, I'm going to have to pick a drill bit sized for each air tube. In this particular instance, I'm going to use a twist drill bit, but you could use a brad point drill bit also. Both will work. The twist bit is a little bit more chancy because it may rip the edges of the hole, whereas a brad point drill bit has a very sharp edge which cuts the perimeter of the hole first. Twist drill bit cuts the inner part of the hole first and then cuts gradually to the outer part. That's not going to be so much of a problem for this small project, so I'm going to use a twist drill bit in this instance. Now the way I do that is I pick a drill bit that is sized. I look at the bottom of the drill bit and I try to size the bottom of the drill bit to the size or the diameter of the vertical air shaft. I want to go a little bit smaller than the vertical air shaft because I'm going to sand or taper the end of the vertical air shaft to fit into the hole that I drill in the horizontal shaft. Now I clamp the horizontal shaft to the bench using a quick clamp, and I'm going to take one of my ring holders with the ring attached and I'm going to hold that in place. Then I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to try to mark where the center of the ring would be. I'm going to take a very sharp scratch awl to start my hole for the drill. I don't want to press too hard because I don't want to crack the horizontal shaft in half. So I make a nice small hole there to start for my drill bit, and I'll place the drill right on top carefully. Now this drill bit happens to be very sharp, and I'm going to go slow. I'm not pressing very hard. I'm going slow, just trying to cut carefully, and there we go. You can always reverse it out if need be. And we have a pretty good hole cut right there. Next thing I do is I take my little piece of sandpaper I used before. I'm going to sand over that hole just a little bit. I'm also going to reach into the edge and sand the edge of it just a little. Now what I need to do is taper this air shaft to fit into the hole. The air shaft is a little bit too big. I picked an undersized drill bit for that on purpose. Now I take the sandpaper, the coarse 120 sandpaper, and I'm just going to taper the edge of that air shaft right there, just like that. Okay, I have a pretty nice taper on the vertical air shaft. Let's see how it fits into the hole. We've got a nice friction fit right there. So this one is ready for glue. Now I use the same technique for gluing this as I did with the ring and ring holder. I put a dab of glue on a piece of cardboard. I gently roll the vertical air tube in the glue, and then I just put it together. Okay, now I want to make sure that the vertical air tube is perpendicular to the horizontal shaft, which will be also perpendicular to the floor in this case. So I'm making sure that it's perpendicular to the shaft, and then I want to look at it from this perspective to make sure that it's still perpendicular to the shaft, and it looks pretty good like that. Looks pretty good like that. So I'm going to set this aside for a little while, about a half an hour, and then we will glue the ring and ring holder assembly to the shaft, and then we're finished. When I drilled my first horizontal shaft, I looked in the hole and I saw something in the hole. It looked like little pieces of tissue paper or something. I tried to blow them out, didn't work. I tried blowing them out this end, didn't work. They looked like they were attached. As it turns out, there's something inside of this bamboo, and it's called the pith cavity membrane. Let's take a closer look. So this is one of the horizontal shafts, and I took this shaft and I split it in half. And when I did, the pith cavity membrane became very evident. I think you can see that right there, just like a piece of tissue paper lining the inside of this entire shaft. That's the thing that may come off when you're working with this bamboo, and that's the stuff on the inside that we need to address. And here's how I did it. I took a split of bamboo and I glued a piece of sandpaper. It's very thin, thin enough that I can insert it into the horizontal shaft. And with the sandpaper on the end, that will help me clear the inside and get the pith cavity membrane out of this shaft. I think you can maybe see pieces of the membrane actually falling out of this bamboo, just like that. Now I have my two assemblies, the ring assembly and the shaft assembly. They are all glued. The glue is dry, ready to go. Now we're ready to glue them together and finish up this hoverball game. I have everything set up on my bench right here. I have the ring assemblies. I have the shaft assembly ready to go. First I begin by clamping the shaft assembly to the bench. Now the bamboo, being round, is a little hard to clamp to the bench. It wants to roll one way or the other, and it takes a little bit of finagling with the clamp to get it to be just right. My goal here is to have the vertical air shaft truly vertical. I want it to be straight up and down, right and left, forward and backward. So that's my goal with this. Okay, I've clamped the horizontal shaft to the bench. Now I'm going to glue the ring assembly onto the shaft. Before I actually glue it though, I'm going to do a dry fit. That is, I'm going to take the ring assembly, I'm going to place it in position, and I'm going to use the rubber band to clamp this. I place the rubber band over top of the ring assembly. I hold it with my thumb or finger. I stretch the rubber band under the horizontal assembly. And at that point, I kind of let go of it. Not totally, because it may fly somewhere. It may snap. It wants to roll backwards. Okay, how can I prevent it from rolling backwards? Well, I can move the rubber band a little bit farther forward on the shaft. And that, oh, look at that. There it is. So it sets in position just fine right there. Now that I've dry fit it, it's time to glue it. So I'm going to take it apart, and I'm simply going to take a dab of glue and put it on the base of the ring assembly. Go ahead and use the rubber band as my clamp, and I'll clamp it together. Now that everything's finished, let's give it a try. That's the goal, to get it to land. Now this is pretty interesting. There's some different things you can do with this. Let me do this edge on and you can see we can actually tilt the ball. Watch this. This particular shaft assembly has very thin, so it's only about a 3 mm opening on my vertical air shaft. That allows me to take a small ball and hover it for quite a long time. So that's the kind of thing you can do with this hoverball game. You can play it. You can see how long you can get the thing to hover. How far side to side can you get it to go? And there it fell off. Now, when we do the hover ball, the ball likes to hover in one particular place. But if it's too low or too high, it tends to go back and forth, or it can just roll out of the airstream completely. And that's what can happen. So that hover was a little too low. So when I see the ball quickly moving side to side, I try to lift it up a little bit higher to make it hover in just one place. This little hoverball game actually can reduce anxiety and stress. There's something that happens when we blow slowly through, especially a vertical air tube that has a small opening. This vertical air tube has about a 3 mm opening. In other words, I can put all the pressure I want behind it, but I simply can't blow a lot of air through there quickly. It's a small amount of air that I blow through there. And blowing a small amount of air through there is very similar to something called pursed lipped breathing. So if you want to do pursed lipped breathing, you do it like this. You purse your lips, take a deep breath, and blow it out through pursed lips. And that's pursed lip breathing. Now when you do that, take a deep breath, blow it slowly through pursed lips, your heart rate will actually go down, maybe 5 to 10 beats per minute. If you had something reading your pulse, you would actually see your pulse drop. You can try it with a friend, have them do pursed lip breathing while you're taking their pulse, and you will actually see that their pulse reduces significantly when they're doing pursed lip breathing. That's the same thing you're doing with this game. So that will reduce stress and anxiety by slowing your heart rate. The other thing that happens is when you're hovering a ball up here, all your attention is focused on that ball and trying to make it retain or stay in place. And that is a nice distraction for your brain. It's a nice way for your brain to take a little vacation, you might say. And so through the distraction mechanism and actually the pursed lip breathing or breathing through a narrow tube, slowing your heart rate, this actually does reduce stress and anxiety. So after a 10-minute session of this, you should feel quite calm. So good luck with your hoverball game, and I hope it works well for you.